among the incense that you burn at night. That ungallic stinking of me place.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Well. We are on the knife edge. We are on the cutting edge of great things happening, if you can believe some of the rubbish that is being written about. Oh, the anticipation. But I'm not going to get into any of that for the moment, because I am going to be holding fire until I get private reports. And in the meantime, I am going to plunge in with what Morgan Mason has brought to my attention. To those of you who are Hollywood aficionados, you might remember that Morgan Mason is the son of the famous movie star James Mason, and his mother was the fabulous Pamela Mason, and he is married to Belinda Carlisle, the wonderful singer, and they have a son called James Duke Mason. He's known to his friends as Duke. And Duke has a website called Duke's Download. It's a channel, Duke with an apostrophe S, Download. And he has posted something which his father has brought to my attention, and I'm bringing it to yours because it's really good. Duke, of course, with his parents, have met Prince Philip and the Queen. And I'm just going to briefly quote him, where he says, "I had the incredible opportunity to meet the late Queen Elizabeth II and her husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, when my mother," that is Belinda Carlisle, "performed at the Golden Jubilee in London back in 2002. I have always admired the monarchy's ability to lend credibility and visibility to causes that don't always get the attention they deserve. For instance, Princess Diana was one of the first major public figures to put the HIV/AIDS epidemic on the map back when it was very much still a taboo subject in the 80s and 90s. That's why it piqued my interest when I saw in the news recently that Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, notice no thee, he's well brought up, are due to visit Nigeria later this month as part of promoting the Invictus Games. Well, the Invictus Games actually serves the purpose of promoting Harry and Meghan, primarily Meghan, remember? She's the star of the show, and she's the one who has to lead all those troops as they are marching up the podium in her shorts, etc., etc. Well, he has made a really good point, which is that Nigeria is one of the states that has banned, it's a criminal offense to be homosexual, to indulge in any same-sex relations whatsoever. In certain parts of this country, Nigeria, those which are governed by Sharia law, and there are parts of it that are, because northern Nigeria is Muslim, southern Nigeria is Christian. Of course, Meghan isn't clear about which part of her 43% Nigerian is Muslim and which is Christian, but we won't go there. It is a capital offence. and it is otherwise an offence throughout the country that is punishable by several years in prison. Now, he's made the point, and I am going to direct you to his website, because obviously for copyright reasons, I can't just filch the whole thing. But he has made a very valid point, which is, isn't Meghan a feminist? Aren't Harry and Meghan human rights advocates? Aren't they LGBTQRSTUVWXYZABCDEF, etc., etc.? Are they going to raise this issue with the Nigerian government? Are they going to remain silent about this? This is an ideal opportunity for Meghan and Harry to show that they actually are more than mouth, and that in fact they can actually use their mouth for the good of other people. Let us see what happens there, because as Duke points out, Nigeria is one of only 6 countries on the entire planet where homosexuality is punishable by death. And there is constant torture of gay people. Oh, Meghan, is Marcus Anderson accompanying you? What about that plastic creature, his good friend? Now, what's his name again? Oh, Aurora? Are you coming here because you have been amid scabies? No, Aurora says she has not been amid scabies. She has been nowhere near scabies whatsoever. But all those people that Meghan and Harry care about so deeply, are they going to put in a word on their behalf? Are they going to intercede in the interests of justice and equality? After all, aren't they humanitarians? Oh, let's wait and see. Somehow, I hear the sound of deafening silence. What do you hear? Kay Johnson says, Lady C, there is talk that the visit of the Harkles to Nigeria has something to do with the next head of the Commonwealth. Do you know if the royal family is aware of this? I very much appreciate your videos and your insider knowledge. Best wishes. Kay Johnson, I think everybody with 2 grains of sense in their head will be totally aware of the fact that Meghan and Harry are on a cap-in-hand monetization and glorification visit to Nigeria. Invictus Games. Never before has a charity served people so well as the Invictus Games is serving Harry and Meghan. That's what public service is all about. The public serves the Duke and the Duchess. The Duke and the Duchess are there to be served by the public. Public service, it got a whole new meaning to the expression public service. Well, I cannot see how Harry can become the head of the Commonwealth unless he is a head of state. Now, are they going to turn one of those 16 lavatories in their Montecito chateau into an independent state that he can be the head of? Or is he going to be the head of Meghan's state after all? She certainly has a big enough ego that she has geographical territory that figuratively would actually render the Russian Federation a tiny speck of sand on the beach of life. There's an awful lot of pumping up going on. I'm being very careful how I put this. There's an awful lot of pumping up going on. Meghan and Harry have shown themselves to be failures. They have made some money off the back of treachery and abuse, but they have made a lot less than they would have been able to make had they gone about things decently. It would have taken more time, it would have required more effort, but it would have been surer and it would have been a greater reality. We need to remember that Meghan and Harry are all about puffing themselves up. It's all about attention. It's all about keeping themselves relevant and making themselves be figures of newsworthiness, partly to satisfy their monumental egos and partly to satisfy their monumental greed and their overweening ambitions. However, they have turned themselves into figures of fun. The New York Post has just, I think, day before yesterday, said that, you know, they are laughing stocks in Hollywood, that they are joke figures, which they are, and that the A-list avoids them like the plague, which it does. But hard on the heels of the criticism is the ridiculous story being put out on both sides of the Atlantic that William and Catherine not only might want, but should want a reconciliation with Harry and Meghan. Why would they want it? Well, the New York Post again had some spurious nonsense about why William and Catherine would want a reconciliation. They don't. They don't. My information is they absolutely don't. They understand that poison poisons, and they understand that the poisonous dew have poisoned them. And there is little doubt in the minds of very many people, some of them very, very close to William and Catherine, as well as Charles and Camilla, that their cancers have been fostered as a result of the tremendous pressure and abuse to which they have been subjected over the last several years, and the constant need to be putting out fires all over the place, some of which you never know about, but many of which you do know about. It is a nightmare scenario that, yes, they go about their business, they try to lead their lives, and there is a constant aggravation and distraction of having to cope with Harry and Meghan's nonsense. I mean, anybody putting themselves in the shoes of the King and the Queen and William and Catherine will be able to know exactly how it feels. I mean, I've had people like that in my life. Many of us have. And just imagine it on a worldwide scale. Well, I've had it on a global scale as well, but not to the extent that they have had it, and not with the intensiveness that they have had it. But why would they want a reconciliation? And then you have Mark Dolan, who actually I like, on GB News, coming out with the absolutely bizarre notion that Charles should forgive Harry and Charles should implement the parable of the prodigal son. And he went into what the parable of the prodigal son was, and actually noted that not only did the father of the prodigal son give his son his inheritance and sent him on his way, but after he had dissipated it and returned and asked his father if he could come back as a servant, his father celebrated his return with a feast. And on that basis, Mark Dolan suggested that Charles should welcome back Harry and just magically ignore what Christ said in the parable of the prodigal son, which is the prodigal son returned of his own volition and asked his father to take him back in the humblest position. Has Harry asked his father to take him back in the humblest position? Oh no. Harry has demanded an apology on behalf of his wife, the victim who, according to what Kinsey Schofield told Dan Wooten, I think it was yesterday, that it might have been day before yesterday. Oh, but anyway, whenever it was very recent. That Eugenie said that she heard Meghan telling Harry that while she was doing yoga that morning when they were all in the horse guard's room looking at or waiting to look at trooping the colour for the Queen's Jubilee, Meghan said that Diana had come to her and that Diana had told her that she was very pleased that Meghan and Harry were there. Now, if that's not serious gaslighting, I don't know what is. And this is not the first time that stories of this nature have surfaced. I have heard one or two of them that I have been sworn to secrecy about. Evidently, Kinsey Schofield was sworn to secrecy too, but decided the time had come to reveal all. Good for her. Well, I've been sworn to secrecy, and I'm afraid until the time is right, I can't reveal some of what I have been told. But it's very much along those lines. And let us not forget that Harry himself has said that the coincidences, but he doesn't use that word, the similarities between Meghan and Diana are truly outstanding. And Meghan has all made it a point of likening herself to Diana. And remember, Meghan is the one, according to Harry, unless I'm very mistaken, who was channeling Diana on the grave. I mean, I don't know what you think that is, but I think that is serious gaslighting of somebody who is clearly mentally deficient and emotionally insufficient and rationally vacant. This is what is being played out on a world stage for everybody to see. This is actual insanity. How could Meghan truly believe that she is in touch with Diana? Does she believe it? Because if she does, she's really madder than anybody would have thought she was. And if she doesn't believe it, my goodness, she makes Charles Boyer in Gaslight look like an innocent baby sucking a lollipop. Unbelievable. And all of this is being played out on the world stage. But wait for what is coming in Nigeria. I am going to be updating you when my bongo drums kick in. But my bongo drums are not going to be kicking in until after the fact. I am not a fortune teller and I am not a royal commentator. I am not commenting for the sake of commenting. I am hopefully going to be in a position to elucidate and inform and enlighten. But that is going to take time because the visit has to come, the visit has to go, and then I have to find out what really went on, which, with a bit of luck, I will. Kit Kat Break says, I was wondering if you knew anything more about the King turning down Harry's request to stay at Windsor. Is that a sign of them closing ranks from the treacherous twosome? Hugs to you, Aurora and Nikki. My understanding is that Charles would love to be able to have a superficially affectionate relationship with his younger son. He would like a lot of what has happened to be calmed down and equanimity reign instead. However, they are all aware that they are dealing with two very disturbed individuals and that Meghan's dripping of poison, Iago-like, into Othello Harry's air, very receptive air, incidentally, has caused a lot of these problems, and he and they are all aware of the fact that you can hope till you're blue in the face. The fact of the matter is, a wolf is not going to convert into a sheep just because you want it to. However, if the wolf can be tamed enough that it's not going to devour the chickens in your pen and the sheep in your field, hopefully you will be able to coexist with the wolf, since you can't put the wolf down. There was no prospect of Harry staying at Windsor. They don't want him staying in situation of that nature. It is self-evident what is going on. If people would simply not be distracted by the rubbish that Harry and Meghan's people and the mainstream media are coming up with. The mainstream media are coming up with various nonsense. For instance, as I said earlier, the New York Post. One day, Meghan is a joke in Hollywood and none of the A-listers want to have anything to do with her. And the next day, William and Catherine want a reconciliation with Harry and Meghan. You see the contradiction, but it keeps the narrative going. The ranks were closed against Meghan and Harry some considerable length of time ago. They know they are dealing with adversaries. They may wish the adversaries and the adversaries' followers and everybody else to believe that they will hopefully convert back into loved ones and allies, but they know it's not going to be happening. There is no possibility of any of it happening as long as Harry is married to Meghan. Meghan channels Diana, remember. Meghan is able to tell Harry anything, and he is delusional enough to go along with it. Superb weed, Doria. Give me another spliff. And while we're at it, what about some ayahuasca? Santeria, 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 Santeria. Serious stuff is going on. And it couldn't be more obvious how this is taking place on the world stage is incredible. But as long as the royal family is governed by law and protocols, they cannot just do what their ancestors used to do, which is detain and just make them headless. Doesn't happen nowadays. Some people might say sometimes old-fashioned solutions with hindsight had merit. Talk for You says, Talk for UK. I don't agree that the antics will stop if the king stands up to them. Very much the contrary. It would just give them more fuel and wear the king and the palace down. It would divert their energy. It will when people stop kissing their arses. When Meghan and Harry don't have anything else giving them a stage to act and money to feather their nest, they will leave us alone. Talk for UK, that means they're never going to leave us alone. Because as long as they have a mouth and a platform, and a need for attention and money, it's not going to stop. So what is our alternative? We need to either succumb to their constant blandishments, which are really a form of torture, or we need to, at every turn, call time on the tune. That's the only way, in my experience, to deal with people of that nature. Because if you ignore them, your silence becomes their possible interpretation of collusiveness. Harry and Meghan have said it. Silence is collusion. And where failing to call them out on their constant antics would be concerned, that would be collusion. That's why it is important to keep on top of what is going on. Or it's a human interest reality. I mean, there is a reason why for thousands of years the great playwrights have written about such destructive and disordered personalities as Harry and Meghan manifest themselves as being. Sophocles, Euripides, Shakespeare, and of course we have farce, because there is a farcical element to this as well. So you have people like Feydeau. This is living theatre. This is daily lessons. That is in part why it is so intriguing. Also, the awfulness of it all, the total brazenness of it all, the total unbelievable nerve of it all is what makes it remarkable. And if it is remarkable, it is necessary to remark upon it. That's my take on it. Lucy says, "Hi, Lady C and your beautiful fur babies." Hello, Lucy. As I always say, in case you read this, I absolutely love your show and never miss an episode. Thank you for all your hard work that you do to give us these videos so regularly, Lucy. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me to be appreciated. Thank you. She then continues, I just wanted to ask if you had watched Dan Wootton's interview with Kevin Spacey that aired today. If you did watch it, I did watch it after reading this. What was your opinion on it? My own opinion was that I felt dreadfully sorry for Kevin and could see how hurt and distressed he was after going through this whole ordeal of being falsely accused and finally being acquitted in a court of law. In fact, he's been acquitted in 2 courts of law, if I'm not mistaken. Cancel culture is truly dreadful. It certainly is. And the fact that Channel 4 are still going after him, with them releasing 2 episodes next week that will further accuse him of supposed wrongdoings, even though they admit that what they are going to reveal does not amount to the level of anything criminal. It's completely disgusting, and after watching his interview, I truly believe in his innocence. Dan also did a wonderful job of interviewing him and should be proud of the way the interview was conducted. Thanks in advance if you answer this question. I'm answering it. I think it's a wonderful question. I think it covers a very important subject, and I am delighted to do it. I loved Dan's interview with Kevin Spacey. My heart went out to Kevin Spacey, and I would encourage everybody to look at it. I also was delighted to notice that in the Sunday Times this weekend, there was an extensive article effectively giving Kevin Spacey a right of reply. I think it is disgraceful. It is an abuse of Channel 4's position that they would continue to hound somebody simply because he behaved in a way that I understand from many people was fairly standard at the time. This is witch hunting of the highest order. And I noticed that two of the contributors were effectively failed actors who, in my opinion, were trying to give themselves a platform. And they're too, in my opinion, dumb to figure out that how many people are going to admire the fact that they have made complaints about such stupidities. I mean, all this victimhood, this, oh, I'm a victim too, I'm a victim too. It's pathetic. So, somebody approached you. You didn't want the approach. Big deal. You said no. He moved on, you moved on. And one of them, 13 years later, one of the supposed victims, is still chasing him down for work, I think. I mean, is this a joke? And so what if he behaved inappropriately? None of it was criminal. And quite frankly, he made a very good point on Dan Wooten's show that sometimes when one person is much more interested than the other and they chase them, ultimately sometimes they get together and have very long and happy relationships. We live in a world where so much that is natural and so much that is potentially desirable is twisted and turned into something that is ugly and awful when it isn't. Okay, so somebody does a little touchy-feely. Big deal. You don't want it, you say no. You slap their hand away. You tell them to something off. You don't make a federal case of it. And you certainly don't go on television and parade what a creep you are. That you are trying to destroy somebody's livelihood. Kevin Spacey was one of the most successful actors. He, to a large extent, revitalized the theatre in this country. He came over, he gave his time and effort, and what has been his reward? That he is being pilloried for perfectly ordinary, not criminal, and maybe not always admirable behavior. But what's the big deal? I mean, really, if anybody is traumatized by somebody making an approach to them and they say no, and they are so traumatized by it that they need to destroy that person's career. They had a problem to begin with. And I mean, I'm the generation where guys did touchy-feelies and gropes and all the rest of it, and you just batted them away and told them in a few ripe words what they could do with themselves. I think this trivializes genuineness and it trivializes genuine criminality. And that is also where the danger lies. And that's only part of the danger, because the other danger is that innocent people who really have done a lot of good for others, as Kevin Spacey has done over the years, certainly for the British theatre, he has been rendered almost bankrupt. His career was destroyed. He's been tried twice and found innocent, and they're still going after him. I mean, is this news, or is this actually the press assaulting him? Because that, to me, is what it seems like, that he is being victimised. I think it's a disgrace. I'm sorry. And I certainly I give no quarter, and certainly do never ever think that people's bad behaviour should be rewarded. And however, in relations involving, shall we say, physical pleasure, two people aren't always equally interested. And that doesn't mean that sometimes a bit of persistence doesn't win the day. That's not the same as stalking. And Kevin Spacey made the point, and I have to say I agree with him, that it seemed that an awful lot of these guys, they try to use him and his physical need to further their career. And when that didn't materialize, they then decided that he was using his power as a star to their detriment. Except he wasn't. He never promised them anything. They were exploiting him. They were using his position as a star to not only sell themselves to him, because patently they didn't do it through actual desire, they did it for worldly gain and professional advancement. And when they didn't get the payoff, they then became resentful. Well, excuse me, if you sell yourself down the river, and who is to blame? You are to blame. One of the moral precepts of life is we are all responsible for our own actions. And just because we have effectively given ourselves to somebody we really didn't want for worldly gain, or we have put ourselves in a position where we are being approached for Congress matters, let's put it that way, when we really don't want Congress with the person, but we want the advantages of it. I know what that's called. And it's very much a pro. And on that note, I will say, the Saba says, well said, Lady C. We are currently witnessing the ostrich syndrome. You are spot on with your point about the palace negating the power and influence of social media. They are out of touch and do not realize how the common man's power is revealed through social media platforms, surpassing mainstream media, which is now openly accused of being bought out and being untrustworthy. Yes. Well, the powers that be have always thought if they ignore opposition long enough, it will go away. And the fact of the matter is, history teaches you that if you ignore opposition long enough, sometimes it will go away. The problem is when it doesn't go away. That's the problem. But you won't know if it will or won't go away until you are caught up in the situation and possibly suffering as a result of it. In this country and in the United States of America as well, our political institutions have lost the respect of so many ordinary citizens. I mean, we've just had local elections in this country, and the Conservatives were wiped out. Are they surprised? Well, they certainly shouldn't be, because their antics have been deplorable. Most people in this country now neither like the Tories nor the Labour Party. And I gather in America, an awful lot of people don't like either the Democrats or the Republicans. We are suffering from a malaise because we have had in the last decade or so a series of governments throughout the Western world that seem to have been more interested in feathering their own nests and preserving what power that as they have and extending it unfairly wherever possible. We're all in pretty big trouble. You know, read history. Read what happened in the Roman Republic between, say, 60 BC and 30 BC. Just read it. Figure it out. There's nothing new under the sun. Many people feel that the democratic system is broken. It's not that the democratic system is broken. It's that the political parties that represent the people are abusing the democratic process for their own political ends. And in the process, they are breaking the democratic system. I am beginning to come to the conclusion that John Adams had a point. Well, I've always known he had a point. But I'm beginning to come to the conclusion that John Adams' point needs to be implemented. In the 1930s in Britain, we had a national government. John Adams warned against partisanship. In other words, what he was warning against was politicians who formed opposing groups, who put the interests of their bloc before, because in those days they didn't have parties, before the interests of the country. I'm beginning to think, certainly in Britain, but in the United States as well, we need national governments where it's not about one party or the other. It is about cleaning up the mess and the abuses that have taken place recently and recalibrating the democratic system so that the people's interest and the country's interest will prevail over the interests of any political party. There was a very interesting article in the Sunday Times by Matthew Syed, who is an excellent columnist. I have to say, he articulated a lot that I agree with, including the fact that all this energy nonsense is a dead waste of not only our time, but of our resources. Nuclear power is the way to proceed. As simple as that. And I am going to end with NYG, who says, Dear Lady C, the New York Post has run 2 interesting items on Meghan in the last 2 days. One concerned the heartbreaking reason William and Catherine want to reconcile with Harry and Meghan, and the other is that greedy Meghan is being laughed out of Hollywood by A-listers. I'd love your take on those stories. Well, I think I touched upon this earlier. William and Catherine, they said Kate, and I get why they said Kate, because Kate for headlines works much better than Catherine, because one's always limited to a certain number of letters. William and Catherine don't want a rapprochement with Meghan and Harry, and certainly not with Meghan. They know what they're dealing with. And greedy Meghan is being laughed out of Hollywood by A-listers. She has been laughed out of Hollywood by A-listers. A-listers don't want to have anything to do with her. I've been saying it for some considerable length of time. I have friends who are Hollywood royalty. They can't abide Meghan. Meghan is like the filthy scrubber that walked into the ball and expected everybody to think she was wonderful. And she stinks to high heaven, and they don't want her anywhere near them. It's as simple as that. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be addressing. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless and goodbye. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed.